Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make your very own Dungeon Master's bag of holding. This is a great size little tote bag for carrying all of your Dungeon Master guides, your player's handbook, your dice, anything like that. This is also a great size bag for a beach bag, makeup bag, overnight stay. We're going to be using this dice colored lining to make it our Dungeon Master's bag, but you can use any kind of fabric you want. It even comes with a little pocket to carry all of your sunscreen, your dice, your pencils, things like that. So if you guys are excited, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. If you haven't yet, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. It really helps our channel grow and I greatly appreciate it. If you've made a Dungeon Master's bag before, go ahead and let me know down in the comments. I want to see your work. Alright guys, let's get started.
For this project, you'll need about half a yard of your outside of the bag fabric and a half a yard of your contrast fabric. I will be using this D20 D4 dice fabric for the inside of my bag with this denim for the outside. You will also need a medium weight interfacing. For your bag, you're going to want to cut 2 of your contrast and 2 of your main fabric for the outside with the sizes of 18 inches by 15 inches and 2 pieces of medium weight interfacing, also sizing 18 by 15 inches. For your handles, you will want to cut 2 pieces of fabric of your outside fabric, or your denim in this case. These will be 3 inches by 16 inches with a matching 2 pieces of interfacing, also sizing 3 by 16 inches. Some tools you'll also need for this project are a marker of any kind. I'll be using a invisible erasable ink for mine, some shears or a rotary cutter, a ruler, and some thread. You will also need your standard sewing machine, pins, and an iron. With the right side of your main exterior fabric down, apply the interfacing, following the manufacturer's instructions. Okay, so now we have both pieces of our exterior lining with our interface attached. We're now going to take our 2 pieces and put them right sides together with your 18-inch piece along the top or bottom. So your 18-inch is here. If you have a directional pattern, you want to put the top of your pattern away from you. So right sides together. We're going to match our edges. My interfacing got a little bit off here, but we just want to make sure our edges are matched. And we're going to be working with both pieces of fabric here. So now taking your ruler, we're going to draw a 3 by 3 square on both sides here. Yeah, both pieces, we're going to cut the square out. Okay, and we're going to repeat the same process with our contrast fabric using my dice fabric for the inside lining of my bag. But we're going to take this fabric just like before with right sides together. And we're going to cut those 3 by 3 squares out again of your bottom edge. And for those of you who are wondering, this is my disappearing ink pen. It's like air and water soluble. So this will come out in the wash or with an iron. Cute little die left over if you want to, just for a keepsake. These cute little patches are great for if you want to like put a patch on a pair of jeans or things like that to cover up some holes or just to have. Okay, so here's our 2 pieces of fabric with our outside and our lining. After we've cut it out, we're going to go ahead and place the lining to the side for now. Okay, so taking the exterior part of our fabric again, we're going to put them once again right sides together and we're going to start pinning. We're going to pin the outside edges and the bottom. Once again, make sure you match your edges correctly. We're going to pin across our bottom here and our sides, leaving these squares open and our top open. Okay, we have everything pinned together. Now we're going to go to our sewing machine and sew with a 1/2 inch seam allowance on both sides and the bottom edge. Make sure you leave open your squares and your top. Remember our little pin cushion? In case you missed last episode, go ahead and check the link up in the card so you can learn how to make your very own. We're going to repeat this step for the lining. Our only difference is we're going to leave about a 4 to 5 inch gap down here on the bottom. So just use your fabric pen to make a mark, just to remind yourself of where you're going to leave that opening. Make sure when you are sewing this that you're using a back stitch at both ends when you start and stop your stitch, just so your seams don't unravel. Again, we're going to be using the same 1/2 inch seam allowance. So now that you have your exterior fabric and your interior fabric stitched together at the seams here, we're going to press our seams open. While we're at our iron, we're going to start working on our straps for our bag. So you're going to go ahead and apply your interfacing pieces to your bag, making sure that you have them all cut appropriately. So we're going to go ahead and apply our interfacing for the manufacturer instructions again with our iron. Once you have your interfacing applied, we're going to go ahead and fold our strap in half, matching our edges, and we're going to finger press. And we're going to iron that seam nice and crisp, so make sure you use some steam. We're a poet, and we didn't know it. Okay, be careful because this is gonna be hot, so you might have to let it cool down a little bit. We're gonna open that up and fold our edge in towards the center again, not completely to the fold, just a tiny smidge away, and finger press again. And we're gonna iron that seam nice and even, again with some steam. We're going to repeat that on the other side. Okay, once we have both halves pressed, we're going to fold this in half again on top of one another and iron this flat. This is going to be the ending width of your strap. Okay, now we're going back over to our exterior piece. We're going to go ahead and open it up through the inside with our hand, going in, and we're going to push together this corner here, matching up our seams, or our edges, and our seams, and we're going to go ahead and pin in place. Making sure that your seams here stay open. There you go, we're pinned open. We're gonna go ahead and do this on the other side. All right, there we go. So we have both corners go ahead and pinned. So we're gonna take it back over to the sewing machine and we're gonna sew across again with that 1/2 inch seam allowance, making sure we backstitch at the front and back. Make sure when you're sewing here that you're sewing your seam flat. When you're done sewing across, should look just like that. Okay, so we're gonna go back over to our straps here. Sorry, this lighting is gonna be a little funny because of my sewing light here, but we're gonna go ahead and start stitching our straps closed. So I'm gonna change my sewing machine to a stitch length of about 2 3/4, and we're gonna start stitching along this open edge first. So using about 1/8 of a seam allowance, we're gonna just go ahead. You guys can see I have my 5/8, 4, 3, and 1 is right about where this first feed dog is, way in there, and I'm just gonna be using a standard presser foot. So we're gonna go ahead in and about 1/8 of a seam allowance. I'm gonna drop my presser foot, and I'm gonna go ahead and lower my needle. I'm gonna hold on to these ties, little tails back here, so that I don't get a knot underneath the back of my strap. And we're just gonna go nice and slow down the edge of this strap. If you need to stop at any point, make sure you're stopping with your needle down in the fabric so you don't mess up your stitches. Make sure you do a reverse stitch on both the front and the back of the strap. I believe I forgot to do the front, but we are going to go ahead and do it here on the back. Back stitch. And off the edge of the strap. So we're going to come back to our strap at the end here that we just came off of, once again holding our tails with the 1/8 allowance. We're going to lower that needle right into that stitch line that we just made. Right about there. We're going to drop our presser foot, and holding that tail again, we're going to continue down the edge of this strap, and we're going to pivot and continue down the end. You can do the previous stitch that we just did, stop, pivot, and go down and then pivot again, or you can go straight off both edges and then do the end. It's completely up to you. So nice and slow again. Back stitch. We're going to lower our needle, and we're going to pivot that fabric. Okay, so coming up to that end again, we're going to lower our needle, we're going to turn, and we're going to finish that edge just like before with a back stitch. Okay, so after sewing those corner seams, we're going to go ahead and turn our bag right side out, and this is kind of what our bag looks like now. So we're going to go ahead and fold this in half, matching our seams again. So we have a seam here and a seam here. We're going to go ahead and match those seams and fold our bag in half. And we're going to find the center of the top of our bag here, which is right about here, and we're going to go ahead and mark the center with our fabric pen on both sides. If it's easier for you to do this when the bag is inside out, that's perfectly fine. We're just marking our center so we can go ahead and start attaching our straps. Okay, so now we have our middle center mark right about here. We're going to take our ruler and measure 2.5 inches from that center mark on each side. So finding my right marker here, we're going to have 1, 2.5. We're going to go ahead and put another mark, and same thing on the other side. There's my 2.5, and my 0 is my next mark. Going ahead and just finishing those marks. If you need to, you can go ahead and transfer that on your other side of your fabric. So taking your handle, we're going to put both of our ends right at the ends of those marks we just made. When you're putting your handles down, make sure you put that right side down and make sure you don't twist your handle, and we are going to pin in place right here. When you pin, make sure you're matching that edge. Okay, now that we have it pinned in place, we're going to take it over to the sewing machine using a 1/8 seam allowance, and we're going to sew back and it should line up with your last stitch here. We're going to sew back and forth with our reverse stitch on these handles to sew them in place. Now this step is completely optional, but I decided to put a pocket in my bag. So using a piece of extra fabric that I had, I made an 8 by 6 inch little square or rectangle, and I'm decided to cut a 2 inch. I made a mark 2 inches up on each side and drew a line making a 45-degree angle. We're going to cut these angles to make more of a pocket shape. Just like that. And we're going to take it over to our iron, and we're going to press our seams inward. Okay, taking this back over to our iron, we're going to fold over about 5/8 of an inch and press on all of our sides here, on all sides. So we're going to fold over. And this would be on the wrong side of the fabric, so the right side down. Once you have them pressed about 1/2 inch at all sides, we're gonna open up those seams that we just made and fold those in half, similar to when we made our straps. So we're gonna go ahead and press. All right, and just like we did with our strap, we're gonna fold that in half again on top of itself, keeping that raw edge inside. There we go. All of our seams are pressed in. So now we're gonna take this over to our sewing machine to attach it to our lining. Coming back over to the machine, we're gonna take our pocket. We are back on our two length stitch. And we're gonna come over here again, and we're just gonna stitch right along that edge that we pressed under. So we're gonna go ahead and drop our presser foot. And we're gonna do this on the long edge of our pocket only. Make sure you hold down that little fold, or you can pin it in place if needed. Just guiding it under the presser foot. And we're gonna sew off that edge. All right, coming over to our lining, we're gonna turn it right side out. Making sure to pop out those little corners. Just love this fabric, it's so pretty. All right, and decide which side you want your pocket to be on. It really doesn't matter, both sides look the same, but we're gonna go with this side. You do not have to use your outside fabric if you don't want to. You can use the same color, the same fabric as your lining. I just had some extra of the outside, so that's what I'm gonna use. All right, so finding the center again, using the similar method we did before we put on our handles, you're gonna fold our bag in half, matching our seams, and find our center line. And we're gonna mark that with our marker. Okay, we found our center mark on our lining of our fabric. Now we're gonna take our center mark on our pocket that we just made and match it up. You can put this pocket as high or low as you want. You are gonna lose probably about another inch when we put it all together with our lining and our exterior. So just keep that in mind. I'm gonna keep mine pretty centered, just maybe a little bit towards the bottom. And we're gonna go ahead and pin in place, making sure we keep all of our seams that we pressed down tucked in to sew around. Now we are only pinning it to this side of the lining, not both. So I'm gonna put my hand inside to help guide me, and I'm going to pin. Make sure you're keeping this lining flat as you pin. You're not catching up any wrinkles. Okay, we are all pinned in place, so now we're going to take it over to the sewing machine and we're going to sew with our 1/8 seam allowance all the way around here, making sure not to catch that second layer. We're only going to sew this top layer here. Now it's going to be a little tricky since our lining is already closed. It's sometimes easier to do this before we attach the lining, but that's completely up to you. This is still doable. You just kind of have to work the fabric along the machine. So I'm going to match up with that seam we just made to close the top part of the pocket. And we're going to sew. Again, just keeping that lining nice and neat under it, preventing any catches in the fabric, and making sure that all of our seams are tucked under. So there we go, our pocket is now attached to our lining. You can also do a square pocket if you like, and you can even insert a place to hold your pen or pencils. You would just simply have the square pocket and sew a line straight down to kind of make a little pen or pencil holder. You just need to make sure that your pocket is the appropriate size for a pen or pencil. Okay, so we've put our pocket in our lining. We still have that little hole in the bottom that's going to come in handy here in just a minute. And we have our outside all put together. So our next step is to put the two together. So we're going to take our lining fabric right side in, and we're going to take our outside fabric right side out and put them together. So matching the right sides, we're going to put our outside inside the lining. We're going to push it all the way down, putting our corners inside each other. Now we're going to start pinning everything in place. So watch finding your seams for both of them. We're going to take our pins and pin the seam from the outside to the inside of our lining. Making sure we pin our seams open. Okay, we're going to do the same thing on the other side. We're going to match up that seam. Matching our edges, matching our seams, pinning the seams open. Okay. Straighten everything up, make it a little bit easier on yourself. Next, you want to make sure your handle's not stuck outside like mine is here. It needs to be in between your little sandwich here. Okay. Next thing you're going to pin are your handles. So matching your edges together, we're going to pin our handles, pin through our handles, so outside fabric, handle, lining, all the way across, making a little sandwich. Because you do not want your handles to move when you sew this together. Now we're going to go around and pin the rest of the bag here, so I'm going to go ahead and put another pin in the middle here. We're going to put a pin in the middle of each of the places that we just marked. Okay, so we're all pinned, everything's nice and tight, all of our edges match. Now we're going to go back over to our sewing machine. Okay, you can use the arm tool on your sewing machine if this makes it easier, but make sure you don't catch the two pieces together and sew your bag shut by accident. So we're going to take it over to the machine using your 1/2 inch seam allowance again. We're going to sew all the way around, back stitching at the beginning and the end. Okay, after you're done sewing, make sure you go over to your ironing board and press open your top seams. Now we're going to go back over. I had mine flipped over for the pressing, but yours should be lining out. We're going to go through, stick our hand through the hole that we left, and we're going to start pulling our bag through so the right side is on the outside. Make sure you're gentle so you don't rip any stitches. You want to check your bag and make sure all of your seams are lined up. Go ahead and just give your bag a good tug to help those stitches lie flat. And you should have your handles on the correct side of the fabric here in the sandwich. If they're not there or if they're twisted, you may have gotten them stuck when sewing around on this seam here. Okay, so now we have it right side out. Your bag should look something like this. We're going to go ahead and tuck our lining inside our bag. Go ahead and push your corners down inside, make sure they're all matched up and in the bottom here, and we're going to start fixing this edge here so it's not all rolled. So we're going to go ahead and just finger roll it here, and we're actually going to pin it in place, and we're going to do that all the way around the bag. Okay, once you've got your seam all rolled flat and pinned, we're going to go back over to our sewing machine. Keep an eye on your handles, and we're going to go ahead and sew right around the edge on about 1/8 of an inch just to help secure everything together. Okay, so taking the bag over to the sewing machine, we're going to do that 1/4 inch seam, 1/8 seam allowance stitch all the way around, and we're going to follow by a 1/4 inch seam allowance stitch all the way around. So there's going to be 2 stitches around the edge. So I'm going to start at my handle, and I am going to back stitch again on top of these handles here.
Okay, so we finished that 1/8 stitch. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the 1/4 inch stitch. Okay, now it's time to sew that hole that we had in our lining closed. So pulling your lining away from your exterior side of your bag, we're going to flatten all this out. Make sure your edges are folding in nicely. If you'd like, you can pin this closed. I am going to put a few in here just to help it out, but if you pressed it enough, you should be okay. So we're going to start back a little bit here and sew all the way across as close to the edge as possible to sew this closed. Ideally, I would want to use a white thread for this or to hand stitch this closed, but I don't really care too much about seeing my stitches since this is on the inside of my bag. So I am not going to change my thread, but that is completely up to you. And make sure there is our seam here, make sure you went a little bit past the hole so that we don't have any flukes that fall through, things like that. If you drop a loose die in your bag, it doesn't fall out of the hole into the lining and into the void. We're going to cut off our strings here and go ahead and turn our bag right side out. Okay, we have it turned right side out. Go ahead and give it one more good iron and press to get all your edges nice and neat, but your bag is now completely finished and put together. Now it's time to add the magic. Okay, so we're going to be adding on our design now. This is the design that I made for our bag of holding using just the basic Cricut software. You will have to be a subscriber to get this pattern, but this is the one that I made myself. So we're going to go over to our Cricut Maker and start cutting this out. So this is an iron-on project, so I'm going to be using the Cricut foil iron-on in a gold color because that is just what I decided to go with. You can do any color you want. Make sure when you are using the Cricut software, if you're using a heat transfer oil vinyl like this, that you use the mirror option. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put out our foil onto our mat. This is the light grip Cricut mat. You can use just any standard grip, and our template is going to be about 8 inches long. So we're going to go all the way down to maybe about 9 inches. Make sure you're putting your foil shiny side down so that we transfer correctly. So unfortunately that was the end of my final piece. But luckily we have enough. Alright, so we have it side down, so now we're going to take it over to our Cricut and start cutting. Now we're just going to take our weeding tool and start to weed our design. So when I was sitting down to weed this, I realized that I did not have the mirrored option turned on my machine. So my words are actually backwards. So I'm just going to pull all of this out and do a separate decal. Okay, so there is my D20 all nice and weeded. I'm going to go ahead and weed my other piece. There we go. So we have bag of holding the correct way on the vinyl instead and we have our D20. Okay, so we're here and we're ready to iron. I have the Cricut Easy Press 2, but you can use a regular iron for this. On the wool setting, just use the directions on the Cricut website for foil iron-on. And I have a little mini ironing board. I'm gonna take my bag and actually stick it over the ironing board so I'm not trying to
iron on top of this pocket. I'm gonna have this as the front of my bag and the pocket side be on the back of my bag. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn this over real quick. Okay, you definitely want to pre-iron your bag first. So we're going to go ahead and do that. I have my iron set to 300 degrees. So we're just gonna go ahead and just pre-iron to get any wrinkles out and to preheat the fabric. I'm just gonna preheat that fabric, get out any wrinkles in that area. And you can see a nice little square of where we're gonna go. I'm going to go ahead and take our D20 and align it up on the center of our bag. Just be careful because this is going to be a little hot. And make sure it's nice and straight and even and centered. Okay, so now we have our D20 ready. We're gonna do this one first. If you did your Cricut cutting right, you will only have to iron once. I get to iron twice because I cut my words backwards. But we're gonna go ahead and iron on our D20. So we're gonna take our Cricut Easy Press and right on top, and we're going to start our timer. I have my timer set for about 30 seconds. Make sure we add a little bit of medium pressure. Ironing it this way with the bag over the ironing board is just going to make it easier for that heat to transfer to your vinyl or your iron-on fabric. There's our timer. I'm going to put a little bit of pressure since I started late. Go. Okay, so now we're going to flip the bag inside out and iron the back. And very carefully, we're going to start to peel away the liner. I can tell already that this side had some trouble sticking, so I am going to add a little bit more heat to that side real quick. And that could be from just flipping the fabric inside out. Just using my weeding tool to help these edges stay down. And you're going to pull straight across, nice and easy. Take your time. And there we go. We have our D20 on our bag. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and apply my actual wording now, since I had to do two separate pieces. And we're going to make sure that these are nice and centered and straight. And we're going to follow the same process we did with our D20. And again, we're just pulling it off nice and slow. And there we go. We are fully vinyl.
And there you go, guys, your very own Dungeon Masters tote bag or your brand new beach bag. If you guys enjoyed this tutorial, make sure you give it a big thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more how-to videos or any more of future content. If you guys want to see another how-to video on how to make a dice bag, you can check that out right over here. But until then, I'll see you guys next time. Happy adventuring!